sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage, and I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares, nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc, I rip to a tear. Switch a scenario, my stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away, asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio once again with your host Nick Bernabe here on UCY.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. I'm really happy to be back, alive and well. April 3rd, 2017. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the weekend and hopefully everybody survived all the April Fool's jokes. I didn't do an April Fool's article this year because last year people took it too seriously and people were like really mad at me. So I kind of left that. Let bygones be bygones on that front. So people doing all your April Fool's pranks and all that stuff, more power to you, but I kind of laid off them this year because it's 2017 and shit's complicated right now.
So you're telling me you're not looking forward to kangaroos being released in Montana?
Dude, so many people fell for that one. Reintroduced, right? Because apparently they used to be there.
Yeah, before the wild buffalo wiped them out.
Yeah. The thing to remember is that marsupials, kangaroos are native to Australia. They weren't anywhere else, along with most of the other marsupials, if not all of them. Of course, I'd have to do my reading on that. But April Fool's Day is a good lesson to be learned. In fact, I shared this satirical meme on my own personal page about, now that April Fool's Day is over, now we can believe everything on the internet. So again, it is a good lesson to be skeptical. I mean, the stuff that you see on the internet, whether it's from us or from anybody else. Now, keep in mind, like the articles you see on the antimedia.org, we've fact-checked all that stuff, and to the best of our knowledge, it's all credible information. But that being said, question everything. Don't just wait for April 1st, April Fool's Day to come around before you start saying, well, let's double check the validity of this story. A great example of that is something that I published on Saturday from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting about the way the media has been reporting on Mosul. So check into these headlines. I mean, if you look at what ABC News, which was the worst of the bunch, the headline on ABC is U.S. reviewing airstrikes that corresponds to site where 200 Iraqi civilians allegedly died. So, the U.S. is running wild right now in Iraq. It's not that much of a surprise if you knew the foreign policy that Obama was carrying out and the platform Trump ran on. This is one of the things where he hasn't really changed up his promise, and he is delivering, and this is a thing where the media is giving him a complete pass on, was ramping up the war against, supposedly against ISIS. So Trump is doing that, and the media is giving him a complete pass. And we're talking about the media in general, not just Fox News, not just, Breitbart, but like ABC, the Chicago Tribune, Yahoo, LA Times, Washington Post, New York Times, everybody, even France 24, the big news outlet in France, everybody is giving Donald Trump a pass on these egregious killings of civilians in Iraq and in particular Mosul. Now, in the same article, again, you have to go back to Saturday, April 1st, but this is one of the real articles, not the fake bullshit. In the same article at the bottom, you'll see a headline from The Guardian, which, The Guardian is, many people consider independent media, but, The Guardian is part of the British liberal establishment, so it should be taken with a grain of salt on all matters. But, they have no trouble attributing massive kill counts to Russia. Russian airstrikes in Syria killed 2,000 civilians in 6 months. There was really only one media outlet that wanted to tally up the U.S. killings last month. Of course, we reported it here on the Anti-Media, but it was Democracy Now! Who said 1,000 Iraqi civilians, Iraqi and Syrian civilians were killed last month by the United States. And so
and that event in Mosul, Nick, shows why the tally now being reformulated for the civilian deaths during the Operation Shock and Awe must have been far lower than really lost their lives, because this is just one building and one rock or one missile, and you remember Baghdad just getting hammered neighborhood after neighborhood. I mean, I think the opening volley must have taken out probably 50 to 100,000 people, and it just they never will report on this stuff because it's almost war crime at this point, because our technological edge is so much more advanced than these countries.
Yeah, exactly, dude. And the one thing to remember is that the U.S. doesn't count. The U.S. doesn't officially count civilian casualties if the person that dies is a male between what they say fighting age, which is like 13 to like old people ages. So if a guy dies in a drone strike, let's say we drop a drone strike and it hits a family where there's 5 people living there. Let's say the husband and his 2 sons are above the ages of 13. Well, then that drone strike will basically say, well, 3 terrorists were killed and 2 civilians, which was like his wife and his daughter. Even if these people are not terrorists, which, as we all know, the majority of people in these countries are not terrorists. There's a handful of terrorists. I mean, I don't know what the last count was on ISIS. I haven't seen a recent count, but I remember when ISIS first emerged and Obama said we're going to send troops back over there to fight them. They acknowledged that there was about 20,000 ISIS. Iraq's a big country. I don't know the exact population, but I'm assuming there's probably around 20 million or so people. I mean, the numbers are very, very, very small, comparatively speaking. But again, going back to the way that they define terrorists, it's any male that winds up getting killed in one of our airstrikes that is above 13. That's basically the way they loosely define a terrorist. And so we can never count on the official numbers that are given out by the government to say, oh, this is how many civilians we killed. First of all, they're going to downplay the numbers. Second of all, the way they calculate the numbers are completely wrong. Completely wrong. Third of all, the media, as is detailed in this article, is covering up for Donald Trump. The quote-unquote liberal establishment media is pretending like Donald Trump isn't killing civilians right now in Mosul and Iraq and in Syria. And so this is something to like really be concerned with. And when you see these crappy headlines out of ABC where it says, U.S. airstrike corresponds to where Iraqi civilians allegedly died. There's pictures of them carrying bodies out. How are you going to say allegedly? So not only do you need to be wary of fake news, like just complete made-up disinformation stuff, which I see friends sharing yournewswire.com and worldtruth.tv and Veterans Today and all these crappy websites that are literally just pumping out fiction that is clickbait. But you also have to double check on all these mainstream stories and read, especially read at the bottom of these articles is where they disclose a lot of the details, because a lot of these mainstream media companies, they know that people, first of all, most people don't read past the headlines. Second of all, most people don't read past the first couple of paragraphs. So they bury the real details down towards the very bottom of these articles where it's like, oh yeah, by the way, you know, the U.S. blew up 200, 300 people. You know, that's where they bury this information. So you always got to click through, check out the sources before you share stuff. Of course, everybody's not going to follow what I do, but that's the way we should be sharing information. That way we prevent the spread of propaganda, we prevent the spread of fake news, and we prevent the spread of misinformation. Because if somebody is putting out legit info, 9 times out of 10, you could track the sources back and make sure it's legit. Now, again, today we're seeing several reports because right now there's a tit for tat going on between the Trump administration and I don't know what to call it, the neoliberal establishment, where a report comes out. Let's see, everybody's favorite mercenary group, right? Blackwater. Let's see who's reporting this. Washington Post. Washington Post is reporting that the dude that founded Blackwater was responsible for setting up meetings with the Russians, with the Trump campaign. And again, this is Washington Post basically wanting everybody to just take their word for it. And then the counter narrative today is that one of Obama's advisors was gathering up surveillance on Donald Trump and his campaign. So we got a bunch of accusations flying around. And again, this stuff consumes the news cycle. But what doesn't slow down is the U.S. empire. And again, this goes back to what I was talking about last Wednesday. I did the show solo for the first time in a while, and I was kind of ranting. But like, these guys love to, the media and the pundits and the politicians, they're hinging the entire news cycle on this Russia thing, and everybody's pointing fingers back and forth, and it was Obama's advisors, and it was Trump's son-in-law, and blah 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 blah. In the end, I mean, the empire goes on, right? And you know, as I mentioned earlier, we're bombing the shit out of Iraq, Mosul, 1,000 civilians dead last month. The propaganda is in overdrive to start up a war with North Korea. You know, these guys are trying to shit with Iran as well.
The thing with North Korea, though, that they're setting up is that they're going to be willing to fire nuclear devices, but I think really what's kind of being set up is that North Korea is going to end up taking the return volleys if they try to do like an EMP over us, because if you hit America with nukes, like, yeah, that sucks really bad and everything, and like a lot of people die, but it doesn't shut us down. But EMPing and knocking our grid out shuts us down, and it pretty much like just destroys us. So of course we'd retaliate against them and just wipe them off the map. But meanwhile, me and you are going to have no electricity. Trucks are going to stop coming in, and it's going to be that nightmare scenario. So that's what we got to worry about with North Korea, because they could be used as the fall guy for the end game trigger, which is our grid going down. And when I say going down, I mean for like 2 years.
Well, that's why we have to be so wary. I mean, everybody is on board with this, you know, North Korea is going to out to get us thing, right? So, first of all, NBC headline today. This was the main story on Drudge for a while. North Korean defector tells Lester Holt world should be ready because North Korea is prepared to use nuclear weapons. So, like, all this propaganda and stuff, it's good and fine, right? Like, we hear it all the time. And, yeah, well, here goes North Korea again. Crazy old Kim Jong, right? But it's gone into overdrive, which tells you that they're getting ready to, whether they just try to wrap everyone up in this nonsense with Donald Trump and Russia and blah, 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 and then quietly go and just try to regime change North Korea. That's now a realistic possibility. And the media, I'm talking about NBC here, which is kind of the, everyone knows NBC is very supposedly liberal, democratic establishment. They're lining up with the Trump talking points about North Korea. A big headline out of Huffington Post is basically pushing Donald Trump to take action against North Korea. I mean, we're talking about the people who you're supposed to, these are the people that we're supposed to expect to be resistant to Donald Trump's agenda. And of course, they're all spewing the Russia narrative and Russia. But nobody is, in the mainstream media anyway, is getting in the way of this march to war with North Korea. In fact, Huffington Post is actually pushing it along. NBC is pushing it along. This is where we have to be very, very concerned. Now, the media is showing this superficial opposition to Donald Trump, where it's like, oh, the media hates Donald Trump. Look how much they report on his Twitter stuff, and look how much they pretend that Russia was involved in his campaign. But also look at how much they're not being critical of his foreign policy. He's doing really, really bad shit. It's very reckless. We're bombing the shit out of civilians. We're on the verge of war with North Korea, and who knows what the ramifications will be of that with China. And a bunch of U.S. generals are talking about trying to fight with Iran. Who knows the repercussions of that with Russia? We're talking about some very, very big things going on foreign policy, and the media is not criticizing it at all. In fact, they're ushering it in. So that is where we should be very, very concerned. I mean, this back and forth on Russia thing, I more and more I'm feeling like this is just a big distraction. Nothing's going to really come of it. It's just a wild goose chase, and it makes a lot of money for these media companies. And then later on they get, well, not enough to do anything, but we're still suspicious, and okay, we're just going to let it go, maybe a couple months from now. But after they've made who knows how much money in headlines and CNN running the airtime and getting all their commercials, meanwhile, the empire marches on, and this is where we should be, making our focus.
Well, that's why he's become the greatest asset the MI6's had since Reagan, and he's going to be compared to Reagan when his term is over. And it's simply because there's never been a better lapdog than a showman for selling what's been hard to sell recently, and that's recruitment. I don't know if you keep track of that, Nick, but I like to read some of the military rags here and there, and their numbers are going up, and they're having no problem recruiting. And naturally the demographics of the recruiting base have shifted a bit, but it's not an issue now, and it was starting to become one. So every time they do this shift of parties and presidents, it's this rejuvenation for the real permanent government, and that's the military. And that's what it's always been. They gave themselves a 10% raise. They're not going to just waste $60 billion. They're going to use it. It's going somewhere, maybe several somewheres, and we just need to be ready for that. I don't think protests stop what they have planned, because I don't think they'll ever need a draft ever again. So,
yeah, it is interesting, and the other thing about all this supposed not all of it, but a lot of the supposed resistance to Trump does not focus on anything other than the figureheads. I mean, the issue here isn't Trump. The issue here is that there's deep-rooted problems going on, and deep-rooted policies, and a tradition of violence going on. There's a great article over on The Intercept today. Glenn Greenwald. I'm sure everyone's aware of Glenn Greenwald. He's the guy that broke the Snowden story and probably one of the most brilliant American journalists alive right now. But he was talking about, Trump just met with Egyptian, I guess you can call him a president, El-Sisi. Many people call him a dictator and, whatever, but
he's a general, right, Nick?
It's like, oh shit, Trump is meeting with this Egyptian dictator. This is horrible. I can't believe Trump would do something like this. And what the point Greenwald makes here is that that's great that you guys are finally ready to pay attention to that, but Obama was doing it too. Like all these guys in the past, Egypt has been one of the closest military alliances we've had over in that region for a long time. In fact, the United States basically single-handedly built the Egyptian military. And so, the thing is that the opposition to Trump that we're seeing, it mostly is superficial. It does not address structural issues. It's just, let's change out the figurehead to someone a little more palatable. We need to take advantage of the fact that right now we don't have a palatable figurehead that can sell us on all these stupid ideas like Obama did with going and toppling Libya or going and intervening in the Syrian civil war. Now with a guy like Trump who is abrasive and who is unpopular, it's now time to challenge these ideas rather than say, well, the ideas are okay, we just need to put a better face on them. No, that's not what we need to do, and that is the superficial resistance. That is what these assholes at the Huffington Post and NBC and elsewhere are trying to convince people of. Like, it's not the system that is the problem. It's just the guy that's running it right now for the temporary time being. That being said, what can we do? What can we do? What can you do? What can I do to make ourselves more independent of this system? To talk about that, I've got an awesome guest on the line. I've got Austin Casso from the Red Giant Union, and I know you work with several other organizations. Austin, welcome to the Anti-Media Radio. How are you doing tonight, man?
Oh, thank you so much for having me on your show. So I'm doing well.
Welcome aboard. Before we start, tell us a little bit about just some of the organizations you work with, and then I'm going to start asking you some questions about your recent project.
Well, a little while ago, I can't even remember when it was, but it must have been at least 2 years ago, that I was, I had started, and this is a while ago, I had started a sustainable living group on Facebook. And about 2 years ago, a man named Antonio Sayant, who is a sustainable film producer, was posting something about his recent speakings at certain events. I think the Green Festival, and he was talking about his initiatives in sustainability. And I read one of his articles, and I was really impressed. And I was like, wow, this guy is posting in my group. Wow, I need to say hi and connect with him. And from there, he had started this organization called Green 360, which unites leaders in sustainability and green initiatives, fighting climate change, all sorts from every single industry from around the world. And our goal is to unite this leadership to start, an integrative platform where we can all benefit from each other's work. And but that was around the same time that I had also started the Red Giant Union, which is my nonprofit. And so we collaborated, and from there we've been hitting the scene and talking to as many people through as many venues as we can, promoting sustainability. And I talk about growing food, and he talks about the entertainment industry and what changes can be made there as a film producer. So it's really interesting, the direction this all took, and the people I've become involved with on my own pursuit for something that I personally love doing.
Awesome, man. So, the reason I invited you on the show, first of all, you were on our program a while back, and you talked about you were crowdfunding a vertical farm, basically a vertical community garden. I think in Indiana. And so last time we talked, you were kind of, getting started. You were trying to raise funds. You were trying to get this project going. And now, as of just several days ago, it looks like you've successfully funded this project. And not only that, but you've actually started building it. So, Austin, tell us a little bit about this project first. And then we're going to ask you a few more questions about, what you're doing in particular.
Well, for one, the fact that I have a farm now is still sinking in, because I can't tell you, this has been a long time waiting, and I've put so much energy and so much energy into this, that it's all kind of come to this point where now it's happening, and what am I going to do from here? And it's wild, all these creative ideas come to mind, and a lot of people have been coming forward, and more volunteers than I know what to do with have been offering their help, and I'm just thinking, all right, so wow, this is going to hit the ground running. I just need something, a way to give people something to do. And so now that I've created this, this farm has come to fruition, I'm just brainstorming ways of moving forward. And by doing that, we work with other people in the community, and we start talking about this initiative, and we start actually writing plans for what we can do within the community, and all sorts of organizations locally and across the nation too. Wanted to get involved. So, but the leading up to this tower farm has been an exciting campaign. I had started on social media, and really I just reached out to thousands of people, and I got other people and I invited them to say, hey, do you want to be a part of this campaign? We'll put your name up front there, and give you credit as a promoter, and promote your business as well. And people hopped on. They said, yeah, I want to be a part of this. And it was encouraging. The more and more people that jumped on, I realized I had hit a sweet spot right there. So I just kept doing that. I kept doing that over and over again. I would add more people on Facebook. I would reach out to my connections on LinkedIn. I would set up even just public events, and I would try to put some FaceTime in front of the public and tell my story, and say what I have to share about my vision for the community. And other people felt inspired by that, and that somebody was taking the initiative in a place where we are needing, or I guess in Lafayette, it is kind of a food desert. I would define, anything where, a community is not growing their own food on for the majority of their crops. If the majority of their crops are coming in from another state, then you're a food desert, in my opinion. So, and a lot of people realize that. A lot of people around here actually wanted to see that change. And at the same time, a lot of people thought, oh, Lafayette just wasn't ready. And so I got, I heard both sides of the story. I'd have people telling me, oh, well, this might not actually work. This something like this, Lafayette's not ready for this. People aren't going to, follow through with something like this. And I was like, well, then I'm going to make it happen. And I did. Well, I didn't just do it. I shouldn't say that I did this, because it was the effort of many people. We all worked together to kind of bring this to the public in a greater capacity than what we were doing before, individually and alone.
Give us your like sales pitch? Like, what is it that you were? What did you tell people that you were trying to build, and what is it that you're actually building?
When it comes to pitch, I don't think of it in terms of a pitch. I tell people I want to grow food. I want to see more people growing food. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And if the economy was a person, it would be saying the same thing. So, being that reality that we're living in, everything is weighing us down. I was kind of showing people what was possible. And I was telling the story of what was possible. I was sharing other people's stories of what they had accomplished. And my pitch really, is that if we come together, we can do something that nurtures ourselves and our economy into a better position. And so really, I said that, I guess, 100 different ways in 100 different places to thousands of different people. But, the conversation more or less revolved around wanting to grow food. And that is a pretty simple thing. Food doesn't need, a pitch, a sales pitch. Are you hungry? It's like, it's just something that's, natural to us. So I never really thought of it, I guess, as a sales pitch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess it's not hard to sell food to people who are hungry, right?
But even if people aren't hungry, we all have food. We say, oh, well, we're not starving, we're not food insecure. But at the same time, we don't realize all the intricate things that play into our health and well-being as a community, and also, just the way we put stress on 2% of the population to produce all of our food. How, in any way, can we see that going right? And so, a lot of these things, it's about addressing the systemic issues and knowing that agriculture is really the pivot of it all.
It really is. It really is. And you bring up some really good points. So let's first talk a little bit about the garden itself. So you're basically building a vertical farm, right?
Yeah, it's a vertical aeroponic farm. It doesn't utilize soil. I've had people are, it's confusing. I've had many people just look at it and then come up to me with questions and ask me like, well, where do you put the soil? Or, is this an irrigation thing that, waters crops around it? And I'm just like, it's, so I guess by, just by looking at it, you might not know what it is, but I think for the most part, once people see it growing, it'll make more sense because it's so new. I mean, at the same time, in one aspect, it's not new. It's been around for, thousands of years if you want to talk about hydroponics as a concept. But, as far as this technology goes, I give it 20 years, maybe more. But, we just, we want people to know that there's other ways of growing food. Not everybody, needs to grow food with soil, and so this, it just creates a much easier way of doing it altogether. You're taking out the process of having to do weeding. You're not dealing with soil-borne diseases, or mostly it helps reduce your pest problem. At the same time, it depends if you're indoors or outdoors. At the same time, there's always ways of preventing pests. But it also with soil, you have to basically condition it. You have to make it conducive to the plants that you're growing, and that is what having a green thumb is. It's not about planting a seed and then some magic happens and it grows. Having a green thumb is really knowing your soil. But most people just don't have the time or the experience with that, and they don't know how to get into it. And so vertical aeroponics is something that basically anybody can do, from, green thumb to a black thumb. You can plant something and it dies in the soil. You plant something in the tower garden and it flourishes by itself. You basically don't have to do anything except maintain its nutrients and water level and pH. And those things are very simple.
Interesting, man. So one thing that is, to me, like a real huge benefit of doing like hydroponics, I personally worked with aquaponics, which is it's kind of like hydroponics, fish that live in the system as well. One thing that I really like about that system, and it's a very relevant issue as well with the climate debate and the drought in California that we're barely coming out of because of all this crazy rain we've been getting. But the cool thing about hydroponics is that it uses so much less water, and so not only are we talking about growing our own food, we're talking about conserving water, and like with what you're doing, Austin, vertical farming, you're conserving space on the ground or square footage if we're talking about indoors as well. So I mean, this kind of system, it's like efficient in every aspect. It's efficient on the soil, which you don't need. It's efficient with water, which I know some systems use like 95% less water. And then growing vertically, you're conserving space, so you can grow a lot of food in a very small place. Whether we're talking about using a lot or a community space, an abandoned lot, or if we're talking about growing indoors as well. Growing indoors, one of the major costs is the square footage of the space that you're using. And so that's what I found so interesting about your project. And I was looking at the tower, the tower equipment. I've seen it before at I've seen it at Earth Day here in San Diego. We have like a huge Earth Day celebration. I've seen them before, but I was looking at your pictures, and then what you were saying about people coming up and asking like, well, what are those? It's almost like a awesome way to get people engaged in a conversation about what you're doing is the fact that these like tower farms, before there's food growing in them, look kind of strange looking, right?
Yeah, they look almost space age and futuristic. I think that's one of the most, other appealing aspects of it is that it's a new, cool way to farm. And you're right, absolutely. It not only does it though save 90% less land and 90% to 95% less water, but it also grows food a lot faster. And with lettuce, you can have a head of lettuce from seedling to harvest in 3 weeks, and that typically would take about 2 months. And so, I mean, that's almost 50% of the time cut in half. So, it's such a huge benefit in all sorts of ways.
That's awesome, dude.
And
so,
conserving resources though is also, another major part of our mission is, we wanted to be able to do more with less. We realized that we are facing extreme water shortages, not just around the world, but in the U.S. as well. We're exponentially using our water, and 70% of our water loss is attributed to irrigation, monocultures, large, industrial agriculture, even processing food from the farm to the plate with meat and cheese, and all these things take such an intensity of water use that we don't even realize we're just flushing it all away. We could do this so much more efficiently if we took the initiative ourselves to invest in this kind of technology.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. One thing, if you guys want to get an idea, those listening tonight, about the kind of water that is used for commercial agriculture, go check out the documentary Cowspiracy.
That's what's so hypocritical about Governor Brown with his conserve water when I think residential is like 2% of the use, like 80% of it's going to like create almonds and stupid stuff like that.
Yeah, they don't want to address that stuff, and that's exactly why I think it's on us and people like Austin to empower communities to start becoming more self-reliant for their food because it just isn't sustainable. You know, we're out here in California, at least I am. I know you guys are elsewhere, but I'm out here in California where people don't realize it, but we grow the country's food out here. People, I'd have
And we love you for it.
I have so many friends online that hate on California and they call us California and that we're a bunch of idiots out here and a bunch of snowflakes. Well, guess what, guys? We make all your technology. We grow all your food. We make a lot of the great ideas come out of here. So anyway, that being said, you know, it isn't sustainable, especially for us in California. Like DB was mentioning, the almonds and stuff, they use so much water. Like we use so much water, we don't have that water to use. We've caused permanent disruptions to the water tables in these areas where they grow all these you know, crops and stuff. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to start looking into community farming and bringing your food closer to your home. And that way you get it fresher, you know what's in it, you know how long it's been sitting there. You know, the people growing it. There's all kinds of different reasons to start embracing community farming and innovative farming techniques. With that being said, Austin, I want to go a little deeper here into this topic of, you know, community farming. And, you know, I want to ask you why? And I can tell you're like really passionate about this stuff, and I feel like you found your calling in bringing food to communities and getting communities to be able to grow their own food. I can definitely tell like this is, you know, you're really passionate about this. So my question is, why?
Why is because I believe. Well, for one, let me start with I don't believe in the marketing narrative that's been following us and haunting us for years that says we need to feed the world. The world's population is growing exponentially. We need to feed the world. Well, all of that interest drives into who can produce the most. Economies of scale. It starts to turn agriculture into a commodity market. And what I came to realize was that we don't need to feed the world. I don't believe that we need to feed the world. I believe the world can actually feed itself. And that's why. And that's what I'm doing. And so that, you know, I'm just doing what I believe in. And so I believe that if other people realize that and realize how much power they actually have to make such a difference, and it's so easy to plant a seed. But, you know, at the same time, I feel like people think it's so complicated, but it isn't. It's like a breath of fresh air when you can have a flourishing farm that produces all of your food and you don't have to go to the grocery store. So that's why.
Interesting. You know, I was just reading an article last week about how a lot of this, like foreign aid, and of course I'm kind of expanding the scope of the conversation here, but a lot of like foreign aid goes to a lot of countries where we like just dump off a bunch of like food, like rice and stuff in like third world countries. And I was reading this article about how that really distorts the farmers' marketplaces over there, where you know, if the U.S. is like, let's say we're giving $3 billion to, let's just say Somalia. And now, again, these are hypothetical, but, you know, let's say we give $3 billion in rice to Somalia. And, you know, the rice farmers that are in Somalia are like, well, what the hell are we supposed to do? They're giving out free rice. We can't sell this shit on the marketplace. And in that way, I think I agree with you 100%. While I'm very compassionate about helping the world and stuff, like a lot of the things that we do to quote unquote feed the world, like the Bill Gates initiatives and the like trying to fix everything with charity, like giving out foreign aid and stuff like that around the world. That isn't how we solve the problems of these countries. That's how we give them a dependency. If we keep giving them free rice, all of their rice farmers go out of business, and they have to have free rice or they'd starve.
Exactly.
So I agree with you 100%, Austin. Our charity should not be about giving people away shit. It should be teaching people how they can take care of themselves rather than rely on externalities and external forces. That's
Exactly.
a really great lesson to be learned there. So, Austin, how do you see this farm that you've helped? How do you see it affecting the community?
Already it's impacted the community. It's inspired many people, and that inspires me because then I realize food. It's not rocket science. Food actually can be a great experience. More than an experience just going to the grocery store and picking out your can and then going home and flopping it onto the fryer or whatever you do, or microwaving it. Food can be an engaging experience where you meet new people and you get to hang out and listen to music and experience all these interesting recipes and people creating these new constructs with food. It's really, food is a social conduit. It brings people together if it's interesting, and you can't just set up a bunch of free food on a table. I'm sure people will come together and collect it, but this is much more than that. We're not just giving away free food, we're giving an experience with the food as well. 30% of our produce is free, and the rest is retail, which gives people an entrepreneurial opportunity to get involved and actually make money. And so that's the unique thing about our nonprofit, is that we serve entrepreneurs as much as we serve the public, and we serve ingenuity, and that kind of thing. It drives people to want to get involved, and already people have been, like I said, I have more volunteers than I know what to do with, and so I just see this impacting the community positively, 110% positively, because people are going to start doing more, and they're going to start, leaving their house to do things like this. And whereas before it was, may have just been your, like I was going to your 9 to 5 job or 10 to 2 a.m. job or whatever, and being miserable and sick and tired of everything, and to see this new thing just pop up, it's like, whoa, what's that? What can I do with that? And that's what I want to show people. I want to show people that this is something new that can be a new opportunity for your career, not just, the daily mode of operation, but we can invest ourselves into something that we know we all love doing, and now we actually have a way to do that effectively.
That's awesome, dude. And I knew there was a reason why I was attracted to your project so much. I didn't know you were so involved in the economic end of things, but that's one thing that is kind of overlooked with what we've talked about so far, is the counter economic value of a project like this. Man, this is the kind of thing that starts disrupting norms, not in a bad way, but in a good way. It
Right.
starts disrupting what we take for granted right now, which is this really fragile kind of supply chain of our food. I mean, like I was mentioning kind of lightly earlier about California. No, California really does grow over half of the country's food. So if something bad happened over here, which, compared to everybody else in the country, California is half a world away. If something bad happens out here, whereas our transportation system goes down, or we run out of water, or there's a major power outage, or there's a gas crisis and energy costs go through the roof, whatever it may be, we're talking about a supply chain that is very, very fragile when it comes to our food. Most people rely on food that comes from out of state, or even out of the country. And by going back and taking a new look at our food with innovative ideas like vertical farming and hydroponics and aquaponics and stuff, and maximizing our efficiency, we can really disrupt this kind of old school food chain that we're now kind of saddled with and are subsidizing with our tax dollars and everything. I mean, a lot of huge commercial interests are involved in the food supply right now. Like, easy right off the top, Monsanto and the huge beef producers and these companies that sell the pesticides and stuff. They're all interested in keeping it the way it is, or just making it even more centralized. But ideas like what you're doing over there in Indiana can disrupt this kind of model and make it better and bring it back home. Me and DB talk about this stuff. We used to talk about it more often, but we still talk about this on occasion. Going deeper down the kind of psychological avenue here, about how food can be used as a means of control. The famous tactic that Henry Kissinger believed in about controlling people's food to control them. And so bringing food back to our communities and empowering our communities to grow their own food, it also gives them a layer of freedom and independence, which could have, I don't even know the impacts it'll have, but I'm sure it will have impacts on the way people think. I mean, Austin, have you seen a difference in the people who are volunteering with you and the people who have helped you with this? Have you seen a difference in thinking?
Yeah, it's not something that I always pay attention to, but it definitely surfaces in ways that give me the chills. Like somebody who got involved, Randy Julian, a while ago. He's been so dedicated to this, and it's so encouraging. He's found his passion. He's found something that he wants to do, that he's committed to, that we're doing together. And that's changed his ways of thinking. It's changed his outlook, and I think, to be able to give people hope and to be able to give people purpose, that's what food does. I mean, planting seeds, it's not just food, but in a philosophical way, planting seeds is what gives us purpose. And so, going back to something you said about, how our system is so fragile. Well, people are really fragile too. And, I feel like we're hurting ourselves by not investing in ourselves. And so when people begin to invest in themselves and they see how they can, it definitely, changes their way of thinking for the better. It makes them more focused and more determined and more resilient to adversity. And that's what's important.
Great points, man. Great points all around. DB, did you have any questions for him, or should I keep going down this, because I got a lot of stuff to ask Austin here.
Oh no, I mean, I'm just absorbing it. Basically, this is going to be the way we do tackle some of the food insecurity that could come with major problems with both the ecology and with the economy, because they really are intertwined. And organic food is expensive, and if you can grow it and that it was made with nothing on it that can give you cancers and make you sick, well, I mean, that's better than the best healthcare.
Yeah, preventative medicine, I guess. Preventative measures for your health is another good thing about having good food to eat. I also see this. I mentioned counter-economics. I believe counter-economics is an activist. It's a form of activism, and being that, especially for me, I believe that growing your own food gives you a layer of independence. It gives you a layer of freedom, and therefore gives you a way to more securely express yourself and embrace the things, the free speech stuff and the other things that many people may find like controversial. But I think relying on yourself for things, including your food, gives you more of a solid base to stand on to exercise your rights. Austin, do you see what you're doing as a type of activism, or do you see it as something else?
Oh, it's certainly activism. I gotta be honest, it is a very subversive thing to do, to grow your own food. And I'm very, I'm very also passionate about that aspect of it. The way that it can be a means of activism to fight the system, to fight corruption. And by taking our means of production back, by controlling our resources ourselves and not relying on bigger institutions, that is a way to fight the system. And a lot of people can, either complain about the system or take actions to make themselves less reliant on it. And then from there, you become less reliant, but then how do you then enable the entire system to be less reliant? And that's another challenge. And that's what this whole movement is about. And so, yes, it absolutely is a form of activism.
Awesome, dude. I totally agree with you. Completely, 100%. No, nothing against the people that go out there and march and protest and picket. I'm completely in favor of that too.
Raising awareness. Honestly, that's always, inspired me. People getting out and just doing something. Somebody doing something, even if it's, I think marching is a little bit more than just talking, because then you're actually, getting people in the streets and you're raising awareness, and that's great. And so I agree with you there that it's it isn't exactly action oriented, but it's awareness oriented, and that's also important.
Yeah, so it's one thing, the first step I guess to being part of making this country and then the world a better place is finding out what is going on and being aware of what's going on, right? And that's why, that's why we spread information around. That's why we make memes and articles and all that. Is we're trying to make people aware that there's some stuff going on that they probably wouldn't like paying for if they knew that it was happening, like the drone strikes and shit that we cover every single day in every single radio show. Like,
yep.
The first step is knowing that something is happening. The second step is going around and helping to inform other people. And like, that's what marching and protesting and picketing in the streets, it's like, hey guys, or sharing our information on Facebook, or emailing our articles to your friends and family or whatever. It's like, look, there's something not right. There's something going on here. And then the next step, following kind of a logical progression here, is going out and do something about it. And Austin, that's what you're doing. And dude, you're doing an amazing job. We're behind you 100% at the Anti-Media. When you're getting ready to do your next crowdfunding, we're going to have you back on the show. Awesome job, dude. Just to reiterate what you're doing to the audience, vertical farming, he crowdsourced it. He made a community farm in Lafayette, Indiana, and we need more people to do that stuff, because this is us taking actions because we know something is not right. Taking actions to solve these problems. We get less reliant on the system, and then the system has less influence over us. And as these ideas spread, hopefully in a decentralized fashion, there's going to be community farms all over this country, and nobody's going to be able to tell us shit what to do, because we're all growing our own food and hopefully producing our own water and electricity and all that stuff. Austin, thank you once again for joining us on the Anti-Media Radio. DB,
yes.
Sal, we'll be back Wednesday night. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.
to the Anti-Media Radio. Your host, Nick Bernabe, here on UCY.tv.